All right, welcome back to another episode of the Student Athlete Sessions. Today we are joined by Ashley Yu, who is the assistant women's basketball coach at Dominican University and also serves as the coordinator of recreational activities and camps. Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We normally get things kicked off by allowing our guests to give a little intro about themselves, talk about where they went to school, maybe what they majored in, and anything else they feel is important. So get us going with that.
Okay, awesome. So I graduated from Hunter College in New York City. I studied women and gender studies. I started off studying psychology, wanted to go into sociology a little bit, but I figured gender studies kind of helped me give a broader study for a little bit of everything. So that's kind of what I did. I played basketball at Hunter. Best 4 years of my life. Pretty much kind of helped me pave the way of where I wanted my career to go, because I think as a 17, 18-year-old kid coming out of high school, a lot of kids go through this and they don't know what they want to do. But then being in college athletics really kind of shaped my love for not just basketball, but just all of athletics. So when I graduated, that's when I kind of figured out I want to stay in athletics. So after I graduated, that's when I went to coach with one of my mentors, Michael Williams, at City College in New York. It was our first year there before COVID hit. So then after COVID, he was kind of like, hey, now's kind of the chance for you to get out of New York and, try and be somewhere else and get some experience elsewhere. So I had applied to a couple of schools, and Dominican was one of the first schools that had reached out to me. I did a lot of research on the school, looked at a lot of videos. We're located in River Forest, Illinois, only 20 minutes outside of Chicago. And I figured, this was the perfect place for me to kind of take a step outside of New York and see some other things. And that's where I've been, this year, going into next year as well.
Yeah. You talked about yourself as a 17, 18-year-old coming out of high school. What did your recruiting process look like? What camps did you go to? How were you seen, and how did you end up deciding on Hunter?
Yeah. So I had played AAU as most high schoolers do. So I went to a ton of different tournaments, a lot of USJN tournaments. I remember Boo Williams played in a couple of local tournaments as well. So there were some coaches, there here and there, especially at the big Nike tournaments and the USJN ones. So that's kind of how my recruiting process was. So I had a bunch of coaches reach out to me, and then a lot of showcases locally when I was playing in the PSAL league in high school. So a lot of city coaches had also reached out to me. So I had a couple of out-of-state offers, and then mostly in-state. But as you would know, college is very expensive. So Hunter being one of the schools that reached out to me, Hunter and Brooklyn were my top two choices, because staying in the city was kind of an option for me and my family, which I didn't mind at all. I love the city. I'm a city kid. So it being the last two options, I just figured Hunter was kind of the best option for me in terms of programs they offered. The team at the time, they're both very competitive teams. Have always been a top four team in the conference. So Hunter just felt like home to me. So that's where I decided to go, and I don't regret a thing.
Yeah. And it seems like you had a pretty profound impact on the team. You were a three-time captain, is that correct?
Yeah. And
helped the program, I think, improve for most of the seasons you were there. And you guys were sub 500 when you walk in the door, and as you're graduating, I think you went 18-10 as a senior, which is a pretty big improvement. What would you credit that improvement to, and kind of what did you take away from being?
I think the biggest thing, you get a lot of talented players and stuff like that. So I had a lot of talented teammates all throughout my time there. But I think the biggest thing for us that played a role was culture. I remember the end of my freshman year, my head coach, John Garrett, who's still there, he said to me at my end of the year meeting, he was like, I think I was our only freshman. So I was going to play a big part into the following year as to what our culture looked like, because my freshman year was actually his first year taking over as a head coach as well. So he had a vision and needed me to kind of help him implement those ideas into our incoming freshmen the following year. So I think it was just following that kind of culture of wanting to be around each other, wanting to work hard, wanting to compete, learning from our mistakes and that kind of stuff, and just being able to push each other, at practice. So I think culture was a huge thing for us because, again, a lot of programs have great players, but if you can't add that cohesive aspect to the players and the coaching staff, then it's just a team of good players that maybe go 500 and win the games that they should and lose the games that they should.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. You were the only person in your class. I for 2 years was the only person in my class. We had a couple guys in the class of 2015 drop out, and it's a unique experience. It can be lonely at times, but I think looking back and given how you guys helped change the program, if I would guess you would look at it the same way, that it pretty foundational part of your life and a good chance for you to take a real leadership role and a real sense of ownership in the program at such a young age.
For sure. I think what really helped too, my freshman year, I had the entire team was full of veterans. I think we had 5 seniors that year. So me coming in a little freshman, like not knowing how to navigate the weight room, the speed of college basketball and that kind of thing. And again, just taking all of those little things that I learned as a freshman and continuing to push the freshmen to come after that. So I think it was just like a domino effect that kind of followed.
Yeah. And you talk about culture. I mean, that's a word that gets thrown around a lot. I think a lot of people strive for great cultures. Not a lot of people actually create great cultures. In my opinion, a great culture extends off the court too, or off the field of play. What did you and the basketball team try to do to give back to the community, or what were you guys doing when you weren't hooping?
We hung out. It wasn't just like we were teammates and then friends in school. Like a lot of times we hung out off the court. We did activities with each other that, coaches didn't say, hey guys, you have to hang out to get chemistry. We just enjoyed being around each other. I think that's what made that group specifically so special in my senior year. We would go to the movies, we would have pasta nights in the dorms, we would cook together and had sleepovers in the dorms. Like we were literally just like a family. So of course, when we get annoyed at each other in a game, it's out of love. It's like you fight with your family and then you guys get over it and you figure it out afterwards. So just stuff like that. It's just bringing back so many memories. And again, I said, it was the best time of my life. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned a little bit, graduating into COVID, which is brutal. It upended a lot of seasons across different sports, but it sounds like you've handled it extremely well. You landed a job right out. We're getting some coaching experience, and it sounds like you were also helping out with setting up community service events at CCNY. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So one of the events that we did, I believe it was closer to Thanksgiving time. There was like this small, I'm trying to remember the group it was called, but it was for a church in Brooklyn, just a really, really small place, hole in the wall. And we kind of helped them stock their shelves for when they opened up the next day, basically handing out food to those in need, just like a pantry thing. So we helped them unload, unbox things, organize everything, just stuff like that. Again, we only got to do that year because shortly after that, COVID kind of hit. But we were looking at a ton of different things. We were looking to even work at like animal shelters to see if we can help out there. Just like a ton of different opportunities that we were thinking about doing for the following year.
That's great. Switching gears a little bit, you mentioned college is expensive. You're from the New York City area, but something that we've been trying to draw attention to is just the affordability of the city colleges, of the SUNY network, and whether it's through the Excelsior scholarship, through the in-state tuition rates. Those systems are consistently ranked at the top of the list in terms of allowing their graduates a high degree of social mobility and to come out of school with a low amount of debt. You just talk about those, I guess, opportunities and how you, I guess, would advise a current high schooler how to best take advantage of them.
Yeah, I think growing up as a high schooler, like I'm gonna be very honest here. I was not the smartest kid in the classroom. I didn't enjoy sitting in the classroom, and I didn't know how much academics was going to play a part of scholarships and stuff like that. You know, I was always told that, but you never know until going through it. You know, now that I'm going through the recruiting process at Dominican, you see how much, you know, your GPA really plays into what you can get part of your financial packages. I think, you know, like CUNYs especially, I think it's great because, again, you talk about in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition. At Dominican, we don't have in-state or out-of-state. It's all the same, which I think is super beneficial for CUNY students. And that's why you see a lot of in-state kids still stay in the city and attend a CUNY. But again, you get your money's worth because, again, you get the great education for, you know, half of what you would pay going to a SUNY, or, you know, even less sometimes based on your financial aid. But I think what a lot of people don't know too is that there's a lot of free money out there in terms of scholarships and what you could qualify for. You just got to go look for it. But I think the benefits of being in a CUNY or a SUNY or something like that has the option for in and out of state tuition. So I think that's definitely something to consider when you're kind of financially struggling to go to maybe like a private school or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's great insight. And again, it's something we're trying to raise the profile of and just continue to promote, because I think there's never enough information out about financial aid. And I think one of the benefits that we love about this program is just trying to bring people on that have been through the system, you know, former players, current coaches who, like you, have seen both sides and really have that unique insight. So appreciate you sharing about that. Yeah. Next, let's move on to your coaching experience and what you know, both recruiting during COVID and what you are looking forward to with Dominican this winter season when things get kicked off.
Yeah. So we have a great class coming in, put on top of, you know, the girls that we already have that are fantastic. So again, this is my first year at Dominican. I work under Antonio Rivas, who's been a phenomenal head coach. This was actually his first year serving as a head coach at Dominican as well. He's been the assistant at Dominican for the past 3 years. So this would be going into his 5th year. So what a year to take over, you know, COVID. So we were lucky to have a season this year. Unfortunately, we only got to play 9 games. Usually in a regular season, we play about 25 before playoffs. But I think getting that experience for our freshmen that we had this year was super important. So that way they can see a little bit of the speed of the game, help them prepare for next year. You know, him taking over, me stepping in as his full-time assistant, I think it changed a lot for the program. You know, they're used to a more defensive-minded coach serving as their head coach, but he's super offensive-minded. So I think we ran a totally different system than the returners were used to, but I think it was more enjoyable for them. You know, they would tell us that, you know, this year, despite COVID and everything like that, they enjoyed coming to practice. Again, changing the culture that they were used to something that they'd rather be around, you know, and not just going to practice and saying, okay, well, I'm on the team, I have to do this. They enjoyed coming to practice. You know, we had 4 all-conference players this year. We had 3 first-team all-conference players, and then 1, our program's first ever rookie of the year. So I think we took one step in the right direction, and we're looking to make something great.
How do you manage that as a recent grad, you know, coaching student athletes who aren't too much younger than you, and, you know, you're growing into your own authority as a coach, and how do you strike a balance between trying to be, you know, pass along the lessons that you've learned, but also, you know, keeping the distance between player and coach? What are your strategies there?
I think the first and foremost, you have to establish the respect aspect of it. You know, like, even though I could be only like 2 or 3 years older than them, it doesn't give them the right to say, hey, like, we're friends. Like, you can make this exception for me. Like, no, this is, we're a basketball program. I'm your coach, you're a player. I care about you. You are part of this program. I want you to be here just as much as you want to be here. But I think establishing that line first is super important. And I think it just comes naturally to student athletes, when you see somebody who's kind of been in your shoes and now is giving forward their, the advice and stuff like that. I think it just naturally kind of happens as well after you've established all of that. And then after that is just creating that relationship, fostering that relationship with our players that make them feel comfortable approaching us, on and off the court about anything. So that way, we have a very open door policy. If they see something in a play that maybe doesn't work, we'll think about tweaking it. Or, if there's a rotation in our defense that just isn't working, again, we'll tweak it. And then just, again, culture is a big thing for us. So.
Very nice. I know you're a newcomer to the conference, the NACC, but what is your walk viewers through the conference and where you see Dominican falling potentially this year?
The NAC has always been super competitive. When I first got here, before we got to play our games, I had watched some of our film on the other teams in our conference. We only got to play half of them this year because, again, we were only allowed to play in-state in our conference this year. And they're super competitive. I think this year, usually Dominican is a top 4 team. I think we plan on going right back there, but again, we're going to be super young. We're super talented. I think this year we can still make top 4. We're definitely going to be in the conference tournament this year. I think it's just going to be a lot of learning curves we're going to have to hit as a very young team.
Yeah, with youth comes, some fresh legs, but also definitely a learning curve.
For sure.
But it should be exciting, and we'll be looking out for you and Dominican to make top 4 and maybe make some noise in the NCAAs.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One thing we always try to do with everyone who's been on is, I mentioned, trying to crowdsource knowledge about the college admissions process and just Division III athletic experience in general. So the question we ask to all guests is, what advice would you give to yourself as a high school recruit if you could do the process over again?
For me, I don't think I would change anything. I'm a firm believer of, you are where you're supposed to be. I think really just taking more initiative learning rather than going into the process thinking exactly what you want and this is the path you're going to follow. And then if you don't follow it, you're kind of lost. I think being open to different opportunities, because again, going back to the whole recruiting process, a lot of young student athletes think, scholarships are the only way to go, D1, D2, NAIAs, but it's not. I think those are great opportunities as well, absolutely. But I think people need to open up to the idea of, a different opportunity outside of an athletic scholarship that can potentially, change your life, which is exactly what it did for me. So just, kind of being a sponge and learning about the process and being open.
Yeah, that's great advice. Any parting thoughts, any last words, people you want to shout out or anything about D3?
Yeah, I always want to shout out my guy, Michael Williams. Got to shout out Hunter, Dominican, my family for pushing me and being there for me all these years, and all of my teammates at Hunter for doing the same. We still keep in touch today. So, I see them whenever I am able to go back home. So, all of them. And thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, that's our conversation with Ashley Yu, assistant women's basketball coach at Dominican. Check them out this year in the NAC. Going to do big things. Ashley, thanks.
Thank you.